Good tea time, my dear strangers. Welcome back to my crafty-handed world. I entertain myself by occasional private birthday cake making. True, I make them together with Mom, mostly because she has slightly less cat hair at her home. But also, it's more fun when we are not momentarily fighting over my crazy ideas. And because it's time to celebrate, I think it's a convenient time to bake one. Well, I finally succeeded in pushing my 2-in-1 idea. After baking the basic 10-inch sponge cake and 8.5-inch walnut cake a day ahead, it was time to outline my idea to Mom. But let's dive into it without further spoilers. We started with preparing the sugar icing, as always arguing about how much to make, and as always not making enough. For the next time, to fill, coat, and decorate this size of cake, we need icing made of almost 18 ounces of butter and a fill made of 2 cups of milk. We dissolved 4 tablespoons of flour and 1 tablespoon of vanilla sugar in 2 cups of cold milk and brought it to boil while stirring. The filler is cooked shortly into a thick porridge and cooled down to room temperature while stirring occasionally to avoid clots, which usually doesn't help. While the porridge was cooling down, we carefully cut each cake into 3 even slices with a knife and a helpful thread. To make the icing, we whipped 18 ounces of real unsalted butter, which is like 4 butter sticks and 3.5 tablespoons, with 14 ounces of powdered sugar for several minutes. When the whipped butter got almost white, we started adding a room temperature porridge until all was well incorporated. The little clots we got in the porridge blended quite well. After making the icing, which is always thrilling, we flavored almost half of it with several tablespoons of my favorite Manhattan cocoa powder. And finally, the fun part. We dribbled a good amount of Czech local rum all over the cake. Czech rum is the only one I know that has such a strong and delicious fragrance, so perfect for baking. Then, we filled the bottom sponge cake with my homemade sour cherry and red currant jam. I make all kinds of jams in the summer, depending on what fruit is plentiful that year in my garden. Then we carefully topped it with our chocolate icing, making sure it wouldn't get all mixed up with the jam. We repeated the process with all the other layers. Finally, we coated the whole cake in white icing, as evenly as we could, and put it to cool down while preparing the smaller walnut cake. None of my cakes go without rum, so after enhancing the cake, we filled it this time with my piquant homemade black currant jam and white icing. Finally, we coated it in chocolate icing before placing it out to cool. And it's time to knead the fondant. I fell in love with this particular one. I'm using an almond-flavored Hungarian K2 fondant. I'm kneading it on a sugar-dusted, clean counter with my gloves on to eliminate any impurities being worked into this pristine white dough. I roll it into a thin sheet, usually slightly more than 1/8 of an inch, because while coating the cake, the fondant stretches and gets even thinner, close to less than 1/8 of an inch, which is the best flavor sugar balance for me. I'm no pro in this, but I usually get satisfying results and don't get heartbroken for every little flaw. That just means coming up with a clever way to cover it. And so, I covered the bottom edge of the cake with a decorative trim. Then, I glued the top cake using a bit of white icing on top of our fondant covered cake. Afterwards, I dribbled melted chocolate all around the edges. I used a spoon, but the piping bag is usually neater. When the chocolate set a bit, I decorated the bottom cake with our white icing. I seem to often forget to stir the icing after whipping it to get rid of the air bubbles. And then the piping is full of trouble. Oh well, next time. I got outvoted of hand making the flowers, so we used the little store-bought ones, which are pretty, but usually not edible, and edible paper leaves. For decorating the top cake, I decided to experiment with the new piping technique I saw online bare minutes ago. Let's give it a shot. Of course, I didn't have enough icing in my bag, so I had a few hiccups in my flow, but from a distance, not bad for the first try. As the final touch, we generously sprinkled the top with chopped nuts, and we are done. This cake was not very complicated, and I'm really excited about how it came out. This is why I'm sharing it, right? I hope you have enjoyed my little cake making video and maybe got inspired to bake one for your loved ones. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. You know how it helps. I have to say, the cake tasted better than it looked, so it was a big personal success. Next time, I have to focus more on the bubbles in the icing. Thank you for watching, and I hope you'll join me next time.